All right, Joshua 19, let's call this one So They Finished, because this chapter is going to describe the way in which they finished allotting the land to the tribes of Israel still awaiting their inheritance. And after allotting the land to those tribes, they're finally going to allot a portion of land to Joshua, as we mentioned a few chapters back. But one thing to notice is that even though his answer to the tribe of Manasseh might have seemed a little bit harsh in chapter 17 when he told them, look, you're complaining because you got too many numbers for the portion of land you got, but your large numbers mean you got extra hands to clear the land that is currently uninhabitable and then clear the inhabitants that seem too tough to clear out because they've got chariots. And so he wasn't simply being harsh on Manasseh, because the land in which, or the city that's apportioned to Joshua, is one that he is going to have to rebuild, presumably because of the destruction that it saw during the conquest of the territory. And so, much like we saw out of Caleb at 85 years of age, eager to go back into battle, not for the vain glory of winning a war, but because his inheritance went through the land of the giants. Likewise, we're now seeing Joshua, after God has already described him as being very old, so old that he didn't require him to go back into battle anymore, but just to allot the land that the young folks will say would go and conquer on from here. Now we're seeing him get his portion of land, but it doesn't come without labor, because even at an advanced age, as God has already recognized, he's going to have to be able to rebuild a city in order to claim what is his. And so what is it that we might be able to understand from that? Maybe another leadership lesson like we got in chapter 18. This time, it seems that the leader who is asking much of his people is willing to do much, the same thing that he's asking them to do. And good leadership, if you've ever had it, sometimes around here I'll mention the story of the time when I worked or preached for a congregation that couldn't fully afford a preacher, but they could afford a preacher that was able to preach on Sundays and be a farmhand during the rest of the week. And so that's what I did for a while. And the thing I admired about my boss on that farm is everything he asked me to do, whether it was dealing with wild animals or simply dealing with difficult jobs, he led by example in everything he asked of me. And in many ways, that reminds me of what we're seeing out of Joshua in this chapter. Even when it seems like he's asking difficult things of the people who he's leading, one, as we've seen in the previous chapter, he gives them specific instructions that allow them to break up a daunting task into more manageable components. And then now we're seeing that he's willing to do some of the very same things he's asking his folks to do. And so with that, to the degree you have had great leadership that is led by example and has given you sound counsel as to how to go about doing difficult things, appreciate that. But understand also, to the degree that you lead, the people who are following you, whether they respect you for it, could benefit from you giving them practical instructions as to how to go about getting difficult tasks accomplished, and could also benefit by the degree to which you're able to genuinely lead by example, since that's what we are seeing out of Joshua. And if we're honest with ourselves, that is the leadership we probably respect. So as we often say, his best to you as you go forward in him. This time, God willing, praying for the wisdom and the ability to lead by example.